This is Pod Populi.
Podcast for the people.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy Henry. Welcome to another episode of Living in Santa Barbara. Let's meet our next guest, Chris Gocong, a former NFL linebacker whose life took a sudden poetic turn. He'll share how a career-ending injury led him down an unexpected path and how art became his savior. Please join me in welcoming Chris Gocong. Hi, Chris.
Hi.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So I was just asking you, how do you say your last name?
It's Gocong, Gocong.
Yeah.
And the origin, I don't know. If any listeners out there know what it means, then
Have you ever met another person with your last name?
only those who are related to me. I'm estranged from that's from my dad's side, obviously, and I'm estranged from that side of my family. But when I was growing up, my dad's dad always told me that Gocong meant strong rock in raging river, which
Okay. It sounds kind of like a strong name. Gocong,
yeah,
it has a G.
yeah.
G's a strong letter.
it's very it sticks out. It definitely sticks out.
Yeah.
So people remember it even if they mispronounce it. So I learned to kind of use it as sometimes a marketing tool and you know, to kind of set myself apart from other artists and other whatever I'm doing.
Well, yeah, that's true, because you got a lot going on.
Yeah. That's
You've
my
had
life.
a lot going on.
I find learning new things really fun, and also it's just good for your brain. You know, I don't want to just do one thing and do it for 40 years. I just get bored.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm constantly just randomly doing stuff, and my friends will text me like, "What are you doing?"
I guess so, buddy. Okay, so you've been a football player, a track and field.
Yeah,
maybe?
I was an athlete. I would say I would define myself as an athlete, and I would just kind of do whatever sport was in season. High school, I did volleyball for a year. I did track. I was a thrower and played football. And then from there, I went to got a scholarship to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and it was honestly the only way that I could go to school was to play football.
Your grades weren't great?
No, it wasn't that. It was just financially, you know. My mom, you know, she was a single mom raising two boys, and
that's amazing.
In Carpinteria, where
Are you the youngest or oldest?
I'm the youngest. I have a brother that's 2 years older than me, so I'm 40. I'll be 41 next month, and my brother's 43.
Okay, so she was raising, and was it difficult to grow up in Carpinteria, or was it? I mean, because it's
carp. No, carp is a jewel. It's just the cost of living.
Yes.
You know,
and that was back then. That's not even right now.
Yeah. But it's the same as nowadays. I mean, it's obviously things are more expensive nowadays, but I identify with the struggle of you know, younger moms raising their family, single moms, and it's just, you know, you got to make it work.
I know. I was a single mom.
So
he's 20.
It's tough. Yeah, it's tough.
And then being in real estate too. So being
You're
in real
always
estate,
on call. I
not
can't
just
imagine.
That, but we have to have so much. We were just talking about how much you need to know and everything that you have to do to be a real estate agent. It's like crazy.
Yeah. No, we were talking before we started. My wife, she's new in the real estate game, and she's really taken off. She loves it. But, you know, for the longest time, she was just studying the books and studying the laws and all that stuff.
It's not about that.
It's not just about that.
Yeah. It's about other stuff.
You do need to know, you know, contingencies and contracts and all that stuff, and make sure that you're not liable for certain things or whatever. But
the laws keep changing too.
They do.
They keep constantly. There's always a new rule, and you have to stay on top of the new rules that happened like a month ago, and then they changed it again.
And it's got to be hard for you guys, because as a real estate agent, you have to educate the buyers and sellers, and not to mention you have to educate yourselves
about not just real estate.
Yeah, it's marketing, it's networking, it's all that. It's hustling. So, I'm happy to be an artist these days.
Well, you guys are an active couple, because you started off doing football and track and field, and now you're an artist, but you're also a radio host. I mean, what? Yeah,
I mean, you're listing. These are like different lifetimes. You know, retired I played NFL for 7 years. I was drafted out of Cal Poly, in 2006. Oh, 06? Yeah, 06. And,
was the goal, did you want to be a professional athlete
no,
or you just
I
kind
didn't
of
want to
fell
play
into
football.
it?
Honestly, I don't really care for the game. I love football, but I don't love to watch football. It's more of just, I love the battle. You know, I love going in.
The challenge. You like to take on challenges. Is that what it is?
I guess so. I don't know. And you really do kind of realize how far you can mentally push yourself, like beyond your physical limits. And, you know, football is a funny sport where it's team oriented, but also there's a lot of individual. Mm-hmm. If you mess up, you screwed up the whole team or whatever. And, you know, there's so much work that goes into it in the off season with running and play books and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. It's like training an army.
It is. Yeah. I'm happy that I did it. I'm happy to be out.
It's a great experience.
It was. It's when I look, so I just started like getting back into watching football. I had to, so I had a catastrophic injury. You know, it was like the week before our first game. I was, you know, a high paid player. I'm talking about my
recent one,
my injury that took me out of the game.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was in my 7th year and coming off a really good year, and I trained my ass off, and it was just, you know, sometimes the universe just decides, oh, it's time to turn right. Yeah. And I had a bad injury. I ruptured my Achilles and I blew up. I fractured my ankle.
Wow. And
at that time I was just like, there was a lot of emotion in that, you know, cause it's your entire life and you realize like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, even though you might have a chance to come back, you know it, like in your gut, you're like, this is it for me. Mm-hmm. So
why is that? I mean, I don't know much about, is that something that is difficult to repair and heal from?
I mean, it's not just the physical side of it. You know, if you look at my right calf, which is where I blew my Achilles, it's 75% as big as my left calf.
Oh, it is still?
But I guess, you know, I could still run. I could still run and jump and walk normally, but it's more of there's like a mental thing where even though you're subconsciously aware of, oh, this is an injured part of me and I gotta watch it or whatever. The other side of it is financial. You know, everyone wants to play in the NFL. Mm-hmm. There were, you know, at any time, there's probably 10,000 people that would do it for 10% of what I was getting paid. Yeah. Right. So it's just so competitive at that high of a level that if you can't 100% go as hard as you can every single play, then you're done and you're not going to get paid and you're going to get cut. And the next week you're not going to get a check. And that's the reality of it. Yeah.
Don't you have a contract that you get paid no matter what?
It's a very one-sided contract.
Really?
We're getting into some, So if you look at an NFL player's contract, especially the first one, as long as you're not like the number 1, the number 5 pick, whatever in the draft, it's a very one-sided contract. So you say you're getting paid $1 million a year, you're guaranteed your signing bonus. Mm-hmm. And say it's a 4-year contract, but at any point they can cut you. Mm-hmm. So, you know, once you're vested, you can get a salary for that year. But other than that, if you're not vested, as soon as you're cut, you're not getting a check. So they prorate your salary over 17 weeks and you're done.
Jesus.
So that's how they keep it competitive. You know, it's free market.
Okay. I shouldn't swear.
I might swear a few times, but don't get mad at it. I hope you listen to that.
Oh my gosh. So then what happened at that moment? How did you take that? How did you handle that?
So I have I'm pretty good when it comes to high pressure situations, and you kind of have to be. Honestly, there was like a whole mixture of emotions, but the biggest thing for me was like relief.
Okay.
Coming in so that was in my 7th year. I had that injury, my ankle injury. And in my 5th and 6th year, I was a very, very physical player. So I'd run down I'm 265 pounds. Yeah.
You played linebacker?
I was a linebacker. Yeah. Outside linebacker for Philly, inside linebacker for Cleveland.
Okay.
And, I'm running. I'm a physical guy. I'm 6'3", 265 at the time. And
track and field guy.
Yeah. So I'm pretty fast. I'm not one of the fastest guys out there, but I'm pretty fast given my size. And I love to run as fast as I could at somebody and just blow them up or do,
Oh my God.
And then towards the last couple of years of playing, I noticed that I would hit and I would see lights or it would just feel different. And then I would go into hits and just not be a little bit cautious.
Yes.
And of course these are concussions. These are micro concussions that are happening every single time. And so that was part of the relief. I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Because everyone who's playing football, they love it, but also they hate it. Mm-hmm. It's this weird love-hate thing where you put everything you can into it, but also you hate it because it's so much pressure. It's so physically demanding, emotionally, the whole time you're worried about getting cut or if they draft somebody to replace you or whatever. So it's super high pressure. So
it's like a man's journey.
If you want to call it that.
I mean, really, it's like,
yeah. And I was just messaging with one of my old buddies from Philly, Matt McCoy. He was, he made a comment on some Instagram post that I made and we were just kind of reminiscing a little bit and we're like, man, we were warriors. You know, like
that was so crazy back then.
When I watch football nowadays, it's like, God, I can't believe I did. That is insane. So it does feel like a different life for me.
I know. Now you're just painting.
I know I'm painting. Yeah.
Okay. So so that moment happened and then what happened after that? And how long between then and painting and how did you start painting? Or what inspired you?
So even though I knew I was done.
And you were living I
was in Cleveland at the time, in Brio, Ohio, which is, great people, but I'm glad to be back in California.
Yeah. It's different.
The weather out there is pretty nuts.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I had to kind of prove it to myself that I'm done.
Uh-huh.
So I went through the rehab and got back into condition, mm-hmm. and my strength and all that stuff, did all the strength and conditioning stuff. And then I had a few, so just a little, a story about how cutthroat it is. They can't cut you. If you have a big injury and they put you on injured reserve, mm-hmm. they cannot cut you without paying you out. So mm-hmm. what they'll do is they'll wait until you're cleared by a medical doctor. Mm-hmm. And so the day that I got cleared, I go to my appointment. The doctor looks at it. He's like, yeah, you're good. Literally, as I'm walking out of the building, I get this phone call and it's the head coach. I can't remember who the head coach was at the time, but he's like, hey, Chris, bring your playbook. We're going to cut you. It's like, okay. And then that's how it goes.
Oh my God.
That's how it goes. Wait, how do we get to that? Oh, okay.
How did you handle it? I guess.
Yeah. I had to prove it to myself that I was done. So I got back in shape. I had a tryout for the Denver Broncos, for Tennessee, Philly, and maybe one other team. Can't remember. And they all offered me minimum contracts. And I almost went with Denver. But they told me, this was at the time, Von Jarrett, he was defensive end back then. He was suspended for some reason. And they told me, oh, you'd be here about 6 weeks. You'd take over his spot until he comes back and then we'll cut you. Mm-hmm. And I just didn't want to do that, not to mention, my head doesn't feel right. My calf wasn't great. Mm-hmm. So I kind of proved it to myself, like, okay, I am done. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I called my agent, I'm like, listen up, I'm done. I don't want to play anymore. And,
how'd the agent take it?
Yeah, he hemmed and hawed and he's like, well, things come in ebbs and flows and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm done. Uh-huh. Like, this is not your body. It's my body. I have to live in it for the next however many years. So yeah, I'm just going to hang it up. And it was like a week later, he unfriended me on Facebook.
No.
I'm like, that's how it is. Yeah. That's how it is.
Oh my gosh. Okay, we're taking a quick break. Don't go anywhere. And we're back. Let's continue.
Yeah.
funny
And
things.
of course, from there, then you realize that not doing anything is not fun.
No, yeah.
So I kind of got myself into art, which is enjoyable.
Did you paint before? Were you scribbling on your notebook school and not paying attention? Like, what was there any inclination that you might become an artist at some point when you're younger?
Well, like any other kid, they doodle or you draw or whatever. And we didn't. I grew up in Lancaster, California, which is middle of the desert in Mojave Desert, and we didn't have cable television. We didn't have anything. It was like go outside and play, right?
Yeah.
So, and of course, you start reading or you'll just draw stuff or whatever. So that was kind of like my background in art.
By the way, I just thought I heard a Filipino accent for a moment.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Sorry. Okay.
It could be hereditary. I'm a California boy through and through, but yeah, it's hereditary probably.
Yeah.
That
does sound Filipino though. Gocong. Now that it.
Yeah. I don't know. I would love for somebody to give me what is it? The etymology? Is that the word?
Know. I thought
the origin.
Okay. I thought that meant bugs, but I'm not sure.
Is it?
No. Anyway. So we're talking about.
We're talking about bugs.
Yeah. Prior to that, you were telling me you grew up in Lancaster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Middle of nowhere. It's much nicer now, but back then it was a hot armpit. And it was, but if you're 7, 8, 9 years old and you live right next to the desert, there's plenty of stuff to do. You just go out in the desert, you throw rocks at each other, you make forts and all that stuff and look for snakes and stuff. So that was kind of like, I was not an iPad kid. Of course, we didn't have iPads back then. But
I have to tell you something about that later.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, because my son and his friends grew up. They were in the formative years, 15 or 16 years old when COVID hit.
Man, what a time. These
16,
kids have gone
17,
through a lot.
Yeah. Like that's when you really become, who you are is in high school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Not to mention social media, cell phones,
oh, God,
all this. There's too much stuff. Your brain is not meant to function that way, but I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
I'm just.
Well, schools are starting to take them away. So that's becoming a policy while they're at school so they can get the kids to start hanging out with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with that. I have an 11 and 8-year-old, 2 daughters, and we will wait as long as we can to give them a phone. So we'll see.
Yeah. So you grew up in Lancaster. We're talking about how you got into art.
Yeah.
So you didn't grow up with devices, right?
Yeah. We couldn't afford them.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah.
But I feel like they don't notice as much what's going on around them.
Yeah. It's I have to admit, my phone, sometimes I'm on it and I realize like, oh my gosh, I'm hypnotized right now.
Totally.
It's so good.
It's so crazy.
The algorithms, and I had to delete TikTok because it was, I just realized that you just go into this like mindless trance. Yes.
It's crazy.
Anyway, so art. How did you get to?
Okay, so you grew up in Lancaster. Your mom said go outside and play, and sometimes you would spend time reading or drawing. Is what?
Yeah, and we're boy. I have an older brother, 2 years older than me, Ryan, and we would we had our best friend was right next door.
Yeah.
Bobby was his name, and we would just do what kids would do. You go explore or like fight. Just jump off a roof or, it was just stupid boy stuff.
Yeah.
And what I realize is it's not the thing. It's more of like, okay, go be bored, go learn how to go explore, go figure out something to do. And nowadays I don't do that as much. It's like we said, phones kind of take over all of our time, but I've kind of gotten away from that a little bit where, the thing that really got me into art, at some point I realized I would go through the routine of nighttime and, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock comes around. It's like, oh, let's put on Netflix, watch a show.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like the same thing over and over. Like, okay, let's put on Netflix, put on a show and then go to bed at 10:30, whatever. And
the mundane.
Yeah. And it's like, you know what? God, I need to do something.
Yeah.
I need to go and create something. I always had this drive in me,
I
which
feel the same way too.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you don't give yourself an outlet, if you don't like figure a project or something to do, it turns into anxiety or whatever,
Yeah.
you know? So that's kind of what I do. That's how I channel.
Mm-hmm. But some people actually live with it and they're okay with it. They don't need to have change.
I am not one of those people. Everyone's different, right?
Yeah. I'm not that way either, but I'm just saying there are some people. It's really hard for me to understand sometimes, but
there is safety, right? There is safety in perceived stability, but nothing is stable. You could be an accountant for 40 years, get hit by a bus, right? Mm-hmm. Like, or, you know, COVID could happen. Who would have known that? And it's just, you got to go and do stuff, right? You got to go and evolve mm-hmm. and figure out what you really love doing. And I think that everyone is born. I don't think they're born with I think they're in a mixture of their DNA, you know, nature, nurture. They have something that they love doing. And maybe everyone hasn't found that, but mm-hmm. it's like, that's kind of like your mission is like, figure out what you love to do and go do it.
I agree. So then how did you move to Carpinteria?
So, my mom ended up getting a job. She was an accountant and she ended up getting a job at Ventura County National Bank.
Okay.
And and keep in mind, this is something that I'm proud of. This is something that my mom is sensitive about. She had us very early in life. She gave birth to my older brother when she was 14. She gave birth to me at 16.
Wow.
I remember her 21st birthday, right?
Oh my God.
So she's a very young mother. She's raising.
Incredible.
Yeah.
How did she do that at that age?
Well, that's what the point that I was getting to is like, oh my God, like she moved us. So she got it was messy divorce. You know, my dad was not a great guy. And, she got a divorce and needed to change things up. So she applied to this job and she got the job and we moved from Lancaster to, the job was in Ventura. She moved to Carpinteria.
Oh, that's a beautiful place to grow up.
Yeah.
I mean, to go to high school.
Exactly.
Yeah. With the view of the mountains.
Yeah. And so we lived in Legoland off Baylord and it was just like a complete change. And I remember the first night that we spent in Carpinteria, everything felt wet.
Oh yeah.
Because you come from the desert and it's foggy over there, right? Yeah. I thought the carpet was wet. I was like, what's going on? And it's just, we're used to this arid climate.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things in life, you look back and there's these moments where you don't realize how big of a branch it's going to make, where it might seem like at the time, like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
But that might just turn into this, good or bad, it could turn into a huge thing. So that was one of those points for me.
Wow. Well, so were you playing sports before you came? How did you get into, you just decided to start doing something?
We're
always
kind
of like
active.
being out in the desert. It's like being out in the desert. You just figure out something new to do.
Just figure stuff out. I don't know. We were pretty athletic kids. But we, for whatever reason, we were never really into, I think I played a year of flag football when I was like 6 or 7. But other than that, we would just like go do ramps with bikes and play hockey or rollerblade or whatever it was. So my background in I would say it's like the more stuff that you do, the more networked your brain becomes.
Yes, I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
So
nowadays, I try to teach this to my son.
It's hard.
Oh yeah.
I don't think it's something you could teach. It's something. It's like a lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
So we just did a lot of stuff, right? And then combine that with this drive to go and do stuff and this drive to like focus my energy on something. Football was a good fit for me.
Good. Yeah.
And it kept me out of trouble.
Yeah. Because there's a lot going on with it.
There's a lot.
Yeah. Why not?
It's, and I'm not like there are people that watch football and they're like, oh, the cover two, this, and the quarterback ran these slants and blah, blah, blah. And for me, like when I was playing in the NFL, I understood all that stuff, but it's such like you can't think. It's one of these sports where you got to turn your mind off and just be pure gut.
Yeah.
And that is how I relate. People are like, well, how do you go from playing football to art?
I can see that.
So different.
Yes.
But to me, it's like,
really.
no, it's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
It's just different medium.
Exactly.
I'm going to do something and then my gut says do this and I do it. So yeah, it's high intuition. I think there are players that are like, athletic geniuses, right? But I saw players like Ray Lewis. He was one of those guys. He just always in the right place at the right time. Just had the gut feeling for it. And you could say it's experience of playing, but also I think there is this just like people just have intuitive sense. And when they follow it and they're good at following it, then it makes them a good player in whatever they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. How quickly did you turn to art after doing nothing and watching Netflix? Yeah,
I did nothing for probably 5 years.
5 years of what? Of Netflix?
Well, so not exactly.
Okay.
So we did things here and there. So the year that I retired, we had Layla, our firstborn.
Okay.
So Mandy, my wife, was pregnant at the time. She was actually not in Berea in Cleveland when I got injured. I was by myself because she was at home in Carpinteria pregnant. So that it was kind of like a good, like part one, part two, where there's like, okay, now football's done.
Now you can be a dad.
Become a dad. Right. So I just really enjoyed, being a dad. And at the same time, I was kind of dealing with, head trauma stuff from football. And so it took me a while to kind of figure that out. I'm still figuring it out. Right. But, you sometimes you got to get a little lost. So that I was lost for a couple of years.
Well, you're just taking a breather.
Yeah. It's easier to see it from looking backward, right?
Yeah.
When you're in something, it's hard. You don't have any objectivity about where you are. And I was a little lost, when I describe, people say, well, how come football players have such a hard time transitioning from playing football? And it's an easy answer. It's like, there aren't a lot of jobs where the job requirement requires, background in knocking somebody's head off, right?
Yeah.
Or a 40 time. So that, in addition to head injuries, in addition to, imagine if you did something you put everything you had into it and then all of a sudden you can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
If somebody took painting away from me, I'd go nuts.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, actually, I noticed that with the musical theater kids, after the show's done, they're sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so imagine that they lost their hands and they couldn't play. It would be like a psychological blow. So I kind of had to deal with that for a while. And it's just life. Things always change.
But do you pour that into your art now?
I do. It's
so it was like you pull that up and you just go.
Not intentionally, right? Not intentionally, not at first, but now I am more intentional with like, now I realize what I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
So I'll have fun stuff, I'll have moody stuff, emotional stuff, but I mean, the thing that I'm always trying to connect to in my art is like emotion. Any portrait, I love doing portraits. Any portrait that I do, the eyes are really expressive. Whatever reference photo I'm using is like it's not like a bland, non-look. There's like shadowing and there's expression in the eyes. So that's what I enjoy. Just trying to capture that with my hand and some paint. So
I'm just thinking as you're talking, I'm thinking, I'm like putting together a show in my head, figurative art show, but you can see all the different ways that you can do it.
Definitely. That's the nice thing about art is I not going to art school or anything like that. I didn't have any limits. I didn't have any rules. It wasn't like, here's the right way to make a composition. Here's the right way to do the palette. It was just like, what do I feel like doing? Right? Okay. And if it doesn't work, then you learn that. Yeah. So
we have a lot of great artists in town.
We do.
Totally.
We do.
It's amazing. We have really good artists in town.
So the conundrum is it's a weird mixture where we have great artists and a lot of wealth, but people don't expect art. So art is very contextual. I forget who said, I think it was Virgil Abloh, where he said he had a crumpled a can, like a Pepsi can, whatever. And he said, if I were to put this in an alley, it's trash.
Yeah.
But if I put it on a podium in New York gallery, this is high art.
Yes.
So art is contextual. So you kind of do have to create this atmosphere where people expect art, right? And I think that is with the funk zone and all that stuff, we're getting a culture of that, but people don't quite expect there to be high art that's expensive and in Santa Barbara. But we're getting there.
Let's pause here for a quick message from our sponsor. So have you shown your art here in Santa Barbara? Where do you show your art? So after 5 years, you decided to start. What was your first piece?
My first piece was my daughter, and it was terribly overworked, and you could see my OCD a little bit, and but it was a good piece, and so actually the thing that got me really into art, my mom, she bought me this like an art camp thing. She's like, "Oh, we're gonna go up to Rio Grande." There's this
fun.
It was fun.
It's a great idea for a mom-son trip. Yeah.
She
where was it?
It's in Rio Grande. Okay. There's this artist called Bob Burridge, great artist, very well known. He's shown in museums and stuff. And she said, "Well, the thing is, you have to go with the portfolio." I'm like, "Mom, I don't have canvases. I don't have paint."
Yeah.
She's like, "Don't worry, I got that stuff."
She's such a great mom.
Oh my gosh, she's trying to get me to play piano and all that.
Oh yeah,
and just constantly.
Is she Filipino?
She's half Native American, half white. Like French, German, something like that. So I'm a mixture of everything.
Okay.
Funny story about her dad, my grandfather, his name was Al.
So you're Indian, American Indian.
Yeah, I think I'm maybe an eighth.
Okay.
So he was born on the reservation. He was Rosebud Sioux.
Oh wow.
Like Lakota Sioux.
What?
South Dakota. And his full name was Alvin Never Looks Back Rainwater. Isn't that a great name? And so this was, I think must be in the 40s, right? So his only way off the reservation, he enlisted in the Navy early. And when they enlist, they take your name and they said, "No, rainwater doesn't work." Mm-hmm. And so he took his stepdad's last name, which is Ramis, Ramis. Mm-hmm. And they misspelled that Rames. So from then on, his name was Alvin Rames. And that was like literally like the government gave him his name.
Sounds so American.
Yeah. No, that's the American way. But
American from like South Dakota.
Yeah. How do we get there? Oh, my mom. Oh, okay. So yeah, my mom bought me this 3-day camp. This is how my brain is. They're everywhere, all over. And she's like, "You got to show up with portfolio." So I start painting. And so you usually paint what's closest to your heart, right? Mm-hmm. So it was my little daughter, Layla, and I loved it. Mm-hmm. It was, I didn't realize at the time is what I needed because, with head trauma, you get like PTSD symptoms. So you have anxiety, depression, headaches.
Wow.
Panic attacks, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Not to mention, you play football, you have orthopedic injuries.
Yeah. I mean, you can't keep that all trapped in your head. You need a release.
So art it gave me a way to kind of check out, like not in a bad way, but in a way where I could just like for 2 hours, my head wouldn't hurt, my body wouldn't hurt. I wouldn't think about panic attacks or whatever, and I can talk about it now. People know, I think there's a stigma around CTE.
What's CTE stand for?
So, what does CTE stand for? I try not to look at it because it's so horrible, but something chronic traumatic
syndrome
encephalopathy or something like that.
Okay.
Basically, you get hit in the head a bunch and then it's not good for your brain.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it. I was going to ask you about that but yeah, that's just, I can't imagine.
Here's the weird thing about it. So exiting NFL, they do concussion, they do baseline tests.
Yeah.
You take like 7-hour psychological exams plus EEGs and all this stuff. They'll put it together and basically they'll say, well, you have symptoms that how they say it, correlate with CTE, but they can't diagnose it. The only way they can diagnose it is posthumous. So they have to literally take your brain, cut it up into slices and look at it. Yeah. So you don't know that's the other part of being an NFL player. When you're done, you don't know how messed up your brain is, and so it creates this anxiety and panic and all that other stuff. So it could be that you do have CTE and it's creating this, or it could be that like your worry about it is creating it, right?
Well,
but what's the difference?
There is neuroplasticity.
Exactly. We're young.
Yes.
So that's the part of
so focus on
art.
that. Your neuro. Yeah.
That's why I love, I'm always trying to learn new stuff not just because it makes me a better, more rounded human, but because I love the challenge of it. It's good for my brain.
Yeah. So it helps you communicate with other people.
Sometimes I can, I'm not a great communicator. Yeah.
Well, but at least you have things to talk about.
I do have plenty of things to talk about. Yes. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, it's better that you have things to talk about as opposed to not much to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. No, it's just one of those things where if I were to be given the choice of, would you like to have a regular life compared to what you went through, and it's like, no, this is
that's your path.
I would never redo it. This is my path, and dealing with head trauma and all that stuff, like that's part of it too. So I think that actually it made me, it forced me to be like, to try to be a better human. Right. Yeah. So not to say I was a bad guy, right? But I had blind spots and when you start worrying about, am I going to, end up with dementia or whatever, you can either go one direction or another.
Exactly.
And I choose the proactive route. So that's why I live the way I do.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why we get along.
You're in a place of evolution right now, right?
I got all kinds of stuff going on.
It's awesome. I love it.
I like knowing a lot. I like understanding people and where they're coming from. So So that's why I do what I do. I
think that's a great point.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of fear in the world right now, especially given the political climate and all that stuff. And if people just talk,
exactly,
right? Like face to face, there's so much nuance in just, there's so much nonverbal communication that goes on. And when it's just done via text or a DM or whatever, there's a lot lost. And so anyway, people talking, you realize that like, no matter how different a culture you come from or the skin color or whatever, people are the same. They want to, raise a great family. They want to have a good life. They want to be happy. They don't want to be in pain. People
they don't want to fight with you.
Exactly.
So, and if they want to fight with you, they're in a lot of pain.
There are some people like that.
Yes. And they just can't get out of the pain.
I seem to be, not that I go to clubs anymore, but I am a magnet for people like that. because
People
I'm
in pain?
taller.
What do you mean?
So we're talking about people, there aren't many people who want to fight,
Oh, yeah.
but I am a magnet for
People that want to fight?
Yeah. It's a guy thing. It's a guy thing.
Oh my God, that is so funny.
I stick out like a sore thumb in club. When I put my shoes on, I'm almost 6'4" or whatever.
Mhm.
And so I'm on the dance floor and I'm not a good dancer, whatever. Even though
Just see you like your head and your
Yeah.
shoulders above everybody else.
I do have great hips, but my beat is a little, although the more drinks I have, the better I dance.
Okay.
But I do see that the younger, I need to prove myself. There's a big guy over there, the kind of prison atmosphere.
Really?
Thing. Yeah, it's a thing. It's like a drunk tough guy thing.
Oh my God.
So I see that. I'm like, God, I don't really respond to it. It's more of just like, man, you don't need to prove anything.
I know.
I'm kind of past that point.
Exactly. Well, hopefully we can inspire people to change.
I think so.
Or
I
to
think,
be
yeah,
better,
no.
or reflect. I mean, listen to other people and take a moment and think before you judge, before you like jump to a conclusion.
I was listening to a book. That's my thing. Audiobooks. I was listening to Nonviolent Communication by some dude. And one of the points he brought up was not comparing yourself to others.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you were to, he brought up if you were to compare yourself to Mozart, when he was 12,
yeah.
and it's like, okay, then you realize like how stupid of a thing that is to do,
Yeah.
because everyone's just got their own path. And so it's like, compare yourself to yourself, right? Compare yourself today to last week to a year ago,
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where, that's something that I'm good at. I don't care. Like I'm only kind of focused on like my own growth,
Exactly.
the growth of my family and,
Mhm.
and my relationships with them.
Yeah,
So,
that's a good message. Well, yeah.
I think that you can really only, just like when you talk to somebody who has a different political opinion than you do. I used to get inflamed about that.
I
used to get
know.
like,
Everybody gets so mad, and it's just unbelievable. Nobody wants to listen to each other at all.
but you're not going to change anybody's opinion.
Yeah.
Just the same as I'm not going to go and change how somebody eats. I can only kind of, regulate how I eat
Yeah,
and my lifestyle and just kind of lead through example.
exactly.
So that's where I limit, like, I can't affect that. It doesn't affect me. I can only really kind of influence my own family. So that's where I'm going to keep my little bubble of worry and
Mhm.
bubble of hope. And, that's,
Yeah,
I also think you can't force people to be interested in certain things.
yeah.
My brother, we were, I guess the term is latchkey kids. My mom was going to night school and stuff like that. At the time when my dad was there, he was working, and we would a lot of times either be by ourselves or with our grandfather who was deaf. And he had if there was no cereal, he would not eat,
Oh.
And so it was kind of up to me, like, oh, I'm going to make some scrambled eggs. I'm
Yeah.
6 years old making scrambled eggs.
Wow.
And that really started my interest in
Absolutely.
cooking.
Oh, you cook too?
I love cooking. I'm not a fast
Yeah.
cook.
Yeah.
I'm not. I'd cut onions.
Uh-huh.
You would probably
Yeah.
scrape your eyeballs out watching me cut an onion.
How long does it take you to make a meal?
It's just like, this is what I love. Just like, okay, you put on like some, like Anthony Bourdain, right?
Okay.
Anthony Bourdain's on the background. You got some onion and butter and garlic in the pan,
Mhm.
and you're sitting there chopping, and like glass of wine. That's what that's for me. That's cooking. That's why I love
Okay.
it.
All right,
just
got
like
it.
just that feeling you get when you smelling it, or like bread rising in the oven. It's like,
Yeah, that's the art of food. I just like to try to get it done as fast as possible and still really good.
Yeah.
To me, it's work. I don't like cooking. I just do it because
I'll spend an
Got the
hour
moment. Yeah.
cooking, and then I'll eat it in 5 minutes.
Okay, let's take a short break. We'll be right back. Well, there was a lot to talk about. So I do want to introduce you to Jeremy.
I have to admit, I am pretty lazy on that. I mean, my wife does most of all that stuff, but I just,
connecting with galleries.
Yeah, but I just want to paint. Yeah. For me, it's not showing. It's just like the doing of the art, and then I'll hang it up at my house, and then from there. But all the shows I've gotten are just been kind of organic. So
such as
I'll just meet people.
In Santa Barbara, outside of Santa Barbara.
Yeah. So funny story. I'll tell the story. My barber, his name's Isaac. He has a little shop called Common Unity. It's in the Funk Zone. Uh-huh. And he... is
that his barbershop?
That's his barbershop.
Okay.
But the funny thing about the Funk Zone is that they don't permit for just, I guess, I don't know if it's the land use permit or whatever, but they don't allow just salons to be there. It's got to be like a brewery, winery, arts, whatever. So he asked me, he's like, hey, can I display some of your art? It'll be an art gallery / what do you call it? Hair sculpting studio.
Do you know Jeremy?
If I do, it's because, I'm so bad with names. Because
he told me he saw somebody's art at the at a barber shop.
That was my art.
And then he put it, did you have a show at Sullivan Goss?
No. Okay,
that's all right. Go ahead. Sorry.
So he asked my barber, Isaac, he asked me, he said, can I put some stuff up? It can't be just a straight salon. I said, yeah, sure. And that turned into a show. And that's cool. And then I had a couple, and it's a tiny little space. It's fun space. Yeah. It's all pop art. I think I was doing some collabs with a neon artist, Rod Latham, and we ended up doing this big skull. I did this 6 foot by 6 foot skull, and it's very pop art. And I working with this artist, Rod, who does neon. So what if we did this? And so we ended up putting 52 feet of neon on it.
Oh, do you have pictures of all this stuff?
I do.
And your daughter too. Is it on your Instagram? Or
yeah, it's on my Instagram at Chris Gocong, ChrisGocong. And I also have a website, chrisgocong.com. But there's this big 6 foot by 6 foot skull. I'll see if I can pull it up. And at some point it got picked up by a New York art critic.
You're kidding.
And so he wrote an essay on it. And he also curated for this lady named Kate O. And she had Kate O Gallery on 72nd Madison. So I did
You're kidding.
Rod and I did a show, a collaborative show in New York at end of 2022. And here I am, 3 years into my art career, like,
that's crazy.
What the fuck am I doing here?
That's so funny.
It was like, people were dressed up like the Hunger Games.
How many pieces did you?
Probably 20 something.
You contributed 20 pieces?
Yes, it was all my paintings and the collaborative pieces with neon on it. And then Rod also brought some neon sculptures.
Okay.
So it was
20 altogether.
It's between 20 and 30.
Wow. How long did that take you?
I had most of the stuff already, and then we probably made 5 or 6 new pieces. So, if you go to my website, you can see my neon collection. So all the neon stuff is done with Rod Latham. So
that's amazing.
This piece is huge. It's this big skull.
Wow, that's
and it's
crazy. I have a lot of friends that collect art and love art.
I'll admit I don't get it sometimes, but sometimes something will just resonate. I'll just see a piece and like, oh my God. And sometimes I'll look on Instagram and people, God, there's so many really, really talented people. And you're just like, oh, okay, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Because these people are just so good, but
remember, you're not supposed to compare yourself.
I know. That's right. Social media.
See?
Social media.
Stop that. So where can we see your art?
I do have at Common Unity. I probably have 20 something pieces up.
Oh, you do? Right now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's right by Moni's on is it Anacapa Street?
Okay. On the same street? It's on the same street?
Yeah. It's like two doors down from Moni's.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know there was a gallery there.
It's a little hole in the wall. You'll see a lot of neon in there.
Oh, okay. That's cool. I'll go check it out.
It's a fun little place.
Should I ask him to be on my podcast?
You would love him. No, he is a skilled communicator. He is a philosopher.
Interesting.
His whole so common unity, it's spelled COMMEN unity, and it's like men, right?
Men.
Yeah.
Unity. Oh,
It's his
communication and men being together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's like a little like where you go talk, like a men's club.
It's kind of, I mean, it's a barbershop, but also he's just like a philosopher. If you talk to him, you can talk about anything.
Okay,
And he's definitely like a node in Santa Barbara. Everyone knows him, whether it's younger kids or CEOs or whatever. Everyone just, there's certain people that are just network people.
Yeah.
And his mission is just like, he realized that, guys, men, they, it's sometimes not manly to express your feelings and to talk about your emotions and all this stuff. But his mission is basically like, he wants to kind of elevate that where, you're surrounded by great art. You can talk about whatever you want. And it's not like sports, it's not that sort of thing. So
yeah, I agree.
We vibe.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Well, thank you. It was so nice to meet you. It was fun talking to you.
This is a good conversation. I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
All right. Yeah, it was great. It was fun. I thought it was too. Your website was chrisgocong.com.
chrisgocong.com.
Yeah.
CHRISGOCONG.com.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks. And your Instagram's the same too.
At Chris Gocong.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Santa Barbara is a true mecca of personalities and culture. To learn more about Chris, please visit his website or Instagram, www.chrisgocong.com or at Chris Gocong on Instagram. And you can see his art at Common Unity in the Funk Zone. That's spelled COMMENUNITY. And if you enjoy the show, please share it with those you care about and give it a great rating on the podcast homepage.